Let's bring in Jon Crispin now. John, great to have you back.
Do I get to comment on that?
Yes, yes, you do. Please.
Look, if you're going to have me listen to it, you have to let me comment. I think that's a rule. Is that like 10% precious? You know what I mean? I think it's like precious to a degree. Like once you get past precious, you're kind of like, now it's a little disturbing that a 6-year-old, like why does a 6-year-old know Hulk Hogan that well? Like Hulk Hogan was big when I was 6.
Yeah.
That was a long time ago. Like there are others, and maybe Hulk Hogan takes us back to a time where, you know, the WWF, I believe it was at the time, is kind of like, you know, it's kind of subdued compared to what's out there today. So maybe it's a positive. It's a good thing that he likes the old school guys.
Maybe it's a positive. It just shows the enduring of Hulk Hogan's career that, you know, all ages seem to know who the heck he is. I will say this, the people in the Jordan Center will tell you, and I'm talking about the people that work in the backstage area.
Yeah.
Will tell you, and you know, John, because, I mean, you were great to all of them. They'll tell you that, you know, they see all the stars, and they can tell you who's acts like a jerk, who's middle of the road, who's quiet, who's what. They say he's the greatest guy going. He will go up to every single person and thank them for working the event, that they can't do the event without him.
I mean, that's got to be – it's funny. No one thinks of it like this, but there's got to be a point where that's actually exhausting. Like being a good person for a lot of – I don't think we talk about this enough. Like when you are a celebrity, and I don't mean the local celebrity that someone's like, oh, hey, I recognize you. Like that's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
I'm talking the person that can't go anywhere.
Right.
That in and of itself is exhausting. Then you have to maintain a persona. That's exhausting. Oh, yeah, then somewhere in there you got to be a decent human being. That's exhausting. I give them credit for it. Like I do.
Yeah.
I think when I see high-level professional athletes be just downright good human beings, it's a positive sign for humanity, because truth be told, it's harder than you think. You've just never been there.
Right. Yeah, you have to be not a great way of saying it. You have to be on all the time.
Yeah. On is the term.
Right?
Yep.
It's not easy to be on all the time.
Not everybody has to walk around State College as Steve Jones.
Oh,
only you know what that's like. Only you know.
Sometimes grocery stores are a challenge, but that's nothing compared to that's nothing compared to this.
Excuse me, sir, do you work here? You're like, gosh, I know, I'm Steve Jones. Get over it. Like, no, I just wanted to know where the Captain Crunch was.
Exactly. I get a lot of that. You look like you know what you're doing here.
Yeah,
can you
got
tell
a helpful face.
Can you tell me where the Cheez-Its are? Sure. So if anybody knows about the culture of UCLA, you do.
Yeah.
Everybody was. In a world where really nothing surprises you, this was one of those moments where it was a surprise. So let's start with this. How do you think, and the people that you know at UCLA, how are they reacting to this?
You know, I think it's a little shock for them, too, because there has been a lot of pride on the West Coast about the Pac-12, even though the Pac-12 has been so down. I would say the Pac-12 has been down more in terms of national recognition and national relevance, more so than it has been in competition.
Yeah.
In competition, the Pac-12 is great for a number of sports, and a lot of them happen to not be football and basketball, but basketball's been really strong. Football has been good, not to the level of when it was Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush, and before that Carson Palmer, and they had they were on a roll. Oregon, the same thing. I think it takes time for them to get back to that, and this might be a move towards that. I think it's been shock because it just doesn't feel right. And I think that's something that's okay to say. Like I said it to somebody, they said, what do you think about this? I said, first I got to tell you how I feel. How I feel is this is weird. It's weird to think that the team I transferred to that was in the Pac-12, which is as far west as you could get, you know, we're looking at the ocean for crying out loud, is going to be in the Big Ten. It's weird. But then when you start to sift through the weird part of it, you start to go, well, what world are we living in today that this could happen? And the world that we're living in today is a business that's now allowed to be a business. Before NIL, before a lot of this, the social issues that we're talking about in sports, within sports, before all this pay for play, before name, image, and likeness, it was like a business that, was under the table. It was almost like if you're going to cheat, you do it under the table, and we're okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're talking about cheating on top of the table, right? That's the way I look at NIL. So you have people building collectives, and they say, you know what, it's a business. So be it. We're going to be the biggest business.
Right.
Well, if that's where it's going, then you have to align yourself with the biggest and the best that can get you on a level with them. And quite frankly, I think those in the Pac-12 know how mismanaged the Pac-12 conference has been.
Yes.
You have a conference, CEO, right? Are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
Of all the conferences, the one that's struggling, Larry Scott wants to be recognized as the CEO of the Pac-12 and fly private jets everywhere and big suites. It gets to a point where the schools go, wait a second, we're the one funding this. And the really successful schools, and when I say successful, I don't just mean wins and losses, I mean media rights and television markets and all that. They sit there and go, wait a second, you can't do this without us. And I think it creates an environment for people like USC and UCLA to say, hey, we'll take this show elsewhere if there's a better option.
Yeah.
And you're at a point now where either you do it or you get left behind. And I think it's interesting with USC and UCLA because they're in the LA media market. And you now expand the Big Ten brand, which I don't even think it's going to be the Big Ten brand when it's all said and done because there's going to be too many people from all over the country in it. It's hard to call it the Big Ten. It's hard to call it Big Ten country, right? What's Big Ten country anymore? What, the Westwood? Yeah, I mean, like downtown LA? No, it's not Big Ten country. Like Big Ten's Midwesterners, and we at Penn State were thrilled to be a part of that group. Because I think Western PA, we can identify with that, right?
Sure.
So you kind of have that natural fit in the Big Ten. Now you're starting to say, well, it's a business, so we go wherever. And the question is, where does it end? Where does it end? Does it end with the Big Ten? Does it end with two power conferences that are ultimately a conglomeration of everybody led by the Big Ten and the SEC, which is kind of where I think it's all going. But I think it's sad to a degree. I think it's just reality. I think we progress too quickly as human beings these days. Technology has done wondrous things for us, but it's also made us move too fast at a pace that we can't sustain. And that lack of sustainability is what concerns me the most.
All right, so I want to take you back to your time at Westwood, which would have been 2002, 3, and 4. Would that be right? Right, that's pretty close.
I was there.
Yeah.
Oh, I redshirted 01-02.
Yeah.
The year, the year Joe was picked up by the Lakers.
Yep.
Now, I had better seats at the Laker game than Joe did, right? Joe was in a suit sitting on the floor because Shaq took up too much space, and I had nice seats.
No
surprise. I had nice seats.
How many sports were at UCLA when you were there as compared to now? In other words, the student athletes that were on that campus compared to now. It has to be fewer student athletes today than when you were there, right?
It's funny. That's a great question. It's not something, and I'll admit to this first before I answer the question. When you're there, you are so solely focused on yourself.
Yeah.
You can't help it. You're a kid. You're just, you're focused on yourself, your group. It's hard for me to say because there were a lot of sports that existed, particularly because of Title IX with the football team,
right.
That offset. There were a lot of other sports that existed that you didn't know were sports, treated as sports, whether
right.
cheerleading had scholarships, whether there was a women's fencing team. There was a lot of that. Sometimes it was just more scholarships than the women's soccer team.
Men's gymnastics would have been on campus at that time with you.
Men's gymnastics was on campus at that time.
So my point is they've dropped sports, and with the pandemic combined with everything else, they're running a $102.8 million deficit.
Yeah.
And, we can talk about how modern times, but sometimes isn't there a financial reality?
Well, the financial reality is we're going to find it pretty quickly, and there's two sports on campus that make you money now, and that's interesting given the fact that, look, baseball, incredibly successful at UCLA, softball, incredibly soccer, successful, track and field, come on. I mean, you got incredibly successful programs, more national championships, I believe, still than anybody in the country, but those are going to become activities because football and basketball is soon to be run solely as a business. And the question is, if you're going to run a business, why do you take things that lose you money? And the interesting thing is You know what those things are? Those things are amateur athletics.
Mm-hmm.
Amateur athletics. This is where Joe and I do agree on something. We both
wait a
agree
minute.
I know
That's breaking news. It's breaking news.
We agree, but how we get there is always different.
Yes.
My way is way more fun. Joe's is a little bit more linear.
Yeah, that's right.
So we look at it and we say, like this was inevitable because amateur athletics is supposed to be something that you either pay for or just break even on. But amateur athletics isn't something that you make hundreds of millions of dollars on, let alone billions of dollars on. When you start making that kind of money, it's no longer amateur. It's someone's making money.
Right.
So we knew it had to go this way. But it's interesting. What I see happening is the NCAA basically spinning off and losing their two biggest assets and trying to find a way to make it work with other sports that still have value to real people. Mm-hmm. And that's where,
that's a good point.
Like, it's so funny in a time where all we do is, and this is not as political as people hear it because it's political rhetoric, but it's actual human terminology. We talk so much about equality, right?
Mm-hmm.
We want to talk about equality. Everybody's the same. We all want the opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what happens when football and basketball say, well, screw everybody else? We're making all the money.
Right.
Well, all of a sudden, it's like, well, you went from the 99% to the 1% and said, forget about the 99% anymore. Right. And I think that's what's happening in basketball. We're becoming really hypocritical when we say, wow, it's about fairness, about getting your fair share. And well, no one's going to stop at their fair share. Plato told us that thousands of years ago.
Yep.
Democracy doesn't work because people always want control. He wasn't wrong. I'm sorry. He wasn't wrong. And this is played out throughout human history. And people will always want more, and that's okay. I understand it. We're in a business. It's fine. But don't hide behind fairness and equality when ultimately it's about control. And football and basketball are going to control the most because they make the most money. Everybody else will be sacrificed. It's a shame because I think there are great things that come from the entire cultural environment that is college athletics, man. Some of my best friends, they didn't play the sport I played. Some of the people that I looked up to the most, respected the most, they didn't play the sport I played.
Yep.
And they may never get the attention or the credit for being as great as they were, but, man, they worked hard, and they were a part of that cultural environment, and I think that will be missed more so than anything else.
See, that's the part where when I look at USC and UCLA, that's the first thing I thought of. The second thing I thought of, obviously, the fact that, I broadcast football, basketball are going to be in. But then I thought about the fact that this TV contract is going to allow all those scholarships to still exist in the Big Ten and at UCLA and USC. Now, it may affect other schools, but all those scholarships are all going to be preserved because now you at least have enough money to cover everything. And Penn State, which puts out its financial numbers every year in athletics, if you look at the bottom line, right, whatever, quote, profit it is not, it's not even 8 figures. Right? It's always in the 7-figure range where they're doing whatever they can, where they're getting a rainy day fund, which in 2020, by the way, it was a monsoon, but in a rainy day fund, and that's about what they keep in reserve as a rainy day fund for stuff, and they're not taking the money and going to a Swiss bank account.
Yeah. But how about, you're talking about preserving scholarships at UCLA. I am almost certain that 100% of their scholarships are fully endowed. Right.
Well, and Penn State, in fact, is number 3 overall, I think, in athletic endowments nationally, I believe.
But it comes down to it, and you say, all right, well, what's a scholarship? Because a scholarship doesn't matter as much to kids in football and basketball anymore. Like, they would say, keep your scholarship, just let me play. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to say all of them. I don't speak for everybody. But of the big-ticket kids who think they're worth hundreds, if not $1 million every year, the scholarship doesn't have value. It's the opportunity to make the money. So the scholarship still has value to those kids to say, look, what's a professional career as a fencer? I don't know. I still got to get a job if I want to pursue it.
Exactly.
Like, the scholarship is everything. And the scholarship to me was gosh, that was the ultimate achievement. I got a college scholarship, Steve, to play college basketball, to represent Penn State. I didn't represent UCLA that well. I think they forgot that I'd be even there, and that was selective, just not remembering that. But it's okay. I've always I've always said, like, Penn State was me because Penn State was home. I claim Penn State because Penn State always felt like home, but part of that was the environment we were in. And at that time, football and basketball were above everything else financially, but it didn't feel that way. It only feels that way today because we talk about numbers today, man. Like, we talk about what everybody makes.
Yeah.
Like, it is our freaking business. And I don't get that, Steve. I don't get why a guy signs a contract and it has to be, headline news, how much he signed for. I don't get why we have to talk about why coaches make or how much coaches make. He signed for this. This is the specifics of his contract. Like, we are all up in each other's business.
Yeah.
And in doing so, we've turned the whole thing into a business. Yeah. So we celebrate the money, and then we put the money up on a pedestal, and that's ultimately what we want on every level, including the kids coming into college.
15 years ago, I was speaking to a Penn State club in Camp Hill, and this was the time, and this is after you left, but the Patriot News was trying to get Joe's salary, right? And the reason they wanted to was it would open the door to get, like, the old main salaries. I mean, there was a means to an end. And I was speaking to a club in Camp Hill, and I was asked about how curious I was about Joe's salary. And I looked at him, and I said, well, first of all, as a friend, I hope he's doing great. I said, but I don't really need to know his number. I said, the most important thing is I need to know my number because my number pays my bills. His number doesn't.
Like, it's like this Instagram world where we project everything that we want people to see also includes some sort of, oversharing of my personal finances. It's the strangest thing to me, but we celebrate it. We put it on a pedestal, and then we tell kids don't value that.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing that I get where I just go, all right, guys, you want to complain about the world we're in, yet you created it. You can, I don't know what Jerry Dunn made as a coach. He was my head coach. I never asked my coach or he inquired about what kind of money he made. Had I known, look, he's doing pretty well, but he's not he's the lowest paid coach in the conference, I might have been a more decent human being. And tried to make his life better, not be a miserable pain in the butt 19-year-old. At least when I didn't score, when I scored, I was a peach, man. I was
you were.
A great guy. I'll even play defense. But no, I just think the world is so different. Like, money is the front page. Like, if you go for a job, I mean, I talked to kids today, Steve, going for an internship, and the first question they ask is money. And I'm just like, oh, man, that's not your fault. You know what I mean? I'm not. I think that's the thing. We like to point the finger at kids and say, well, these kids are selfish and greedy. And I'm saying, what about those oil profits?
Right.
What about our government with taxes? It doesn't. It didn't start with kids. It just trickled down that way.
Yeah, that's why everybody knows James's contract. As a friend, I hope James is doing awesome, but I don't need to know his numbers. Pat Kraft, I hope Pat is doing awesome financially, but I don't need to know his numbers. That's his business. It's weird, like so. Man. That's just how I look at it. Hey, John.
I don't even think it's weird to us anymore. I think it's at a point where we just keep going. There's that. That's crazy.
True.
Juan Soto, $440 million. That's crazy. We can't even compute that.
I can't even put that in my mind. By the way, Mega Millions is coming up tonight. All right, so John, as always, my friend, thanks so much, and I'm glad to hear you and Joe at least agreed on something, even though it wasn't the same path.
Yeah, we do. We agree, but it'll sound like an argument.
Perfect. Thanks, John.